this is an Easter egg inside the book. If you download the source code, this is an extra example that doesn't actually exist in the text, but it's used in the text. So to provide an example output, I've got an EPUB file that looks just like this. It's just a scrambled array of bytes, and there's almost no structure in here at all. Whereas if we go to an HTML file, you'll see that inside it there's a huge amount of repetition. There's a lot of white space that's been created, also a lot of this kind of blocky dark color, and very few black segments. And all of those have become significant over as we get going. And just to kind of like flesh it out a bit, here's what the text version of that file looks like. So there's very little white, but there's a lot of gray, and we will, I say we, if you choose to follow along, we will explore why that is and like allow you to create your own files. So to start off, I just want to go with the workflow of creating a project in Rust. So if you've used Python or what have you, all you need to do is like Python space file name, and then you go. Inside this thing, inside Rust, it's a compiled language, which means that we actually need to create a we need to compile our source code. I need to fix this problem. So the first thing that the compiler is telling us is like, oh, I can't actually find color. So what on earth do you refer to there? Now I thought it was inside image. Let's start with somewhere else and we'll come to it. So the first thing that we want to do is create a new project. We'll start from scratch. Actually, we'll get rid of all of this. And all I want to do here is create a command line file, a command line program that can print out its arguments. So it's a really strange place to start, I suppose, but we want to be able to make sure that we can take arguments from the command line and print them to the screen. Nope, we're getting a whole bunch of other stuff here. These two are the... Oh, we'll just remove our imports because we're no longer needing them. Now we get some other things as well. We want a usage doc, so we need to bring this one back in scope. And we've got one that we are actually using, and we will probably need those other ones too, but we'll get there. So we're just going to get through these compile errors. Okay, so this is what we needed for our first argument is this arg1 thing. To print an object to the screen, we invoke the print line macro by providing these curly brackets and then an arg. So this feels a lot like Python's formatting, which is kind of what it's intended to feel like, I think. And now it's saying, whoa, I don't know what you mean here, sir. I need to provide a little bit of extra syntactic sugar, which actually under the hood asks Rust to use the debug output, not the display output. So this semicolon question mark syntax will opt in to providing output that's designed for a programmer to read rather than kind of the end user. Now we get into some really interesting other problems. I get told that we can't use it twice. What does that mean? Well, what it means is that we've encountered this problem with the borrow checker. Now, this is the famous borrow checker that like hits everyone up like hits everyone in Rust. It is famously difficult to kind of understand. It's one of the concepts that's really, really complicated to get a handle of mentally to start with. But actually, once you've got it, it feels like, oh, I should have had this in every programming language. At least that's my view. What have we got? Well, what it's saying is that arg1 is being used up here. I've got this expect thing, and I'll explain what that is very shortly. And also arg2 is also being used. At the end of the call to this very first argument, sorry, the arg1.expect, we have a we've actually used up the value. By design, Rust won't allow you to use a potential, like create a situation in which there is illegal memory access. And so the arg1 has actually been kind of taken up in this input file name, and that's invalid. Even if you only need to read from that value, it's actually an invalid thing to do to ask for it later. So instead, one of the options that we could do actually is we'll see what our expect does before we actually see it in before we explain why it is that it is the case. So what we've got now is, so the lifetime of input file name is open. It exists for as long as we use it for, either to the end of the scope of the owner, which is this main function, or until we use it in a way that it provides until we kind of gift ownership to some other function. Now, println actually doesn't require ownership to print something out. It takes a reference, and a reference is it's kind of the terminology in the Rust world is borrow. So that means that Rust will provide main with the ability to lend out access to other functions. In our case, we're invoking a macro, but the kind of the mechanics are the same. Now, if we try to, so let's actually run this. So if I've got this little helper utility called cargo, it comes kind of with Rust, and I'll just bring that back so that it doesn't kind of look really wobbly. Cargo run. Now we should receive this output, this usage diagram. Yeah, string. We blew up saying that it doesn't quite look exactly like we want. I'll just quieten that down. So we've got this thing thread main panicked at usage. What is going on here? Well, what's going on here is this expect call method invocation is trying to say that I expect that arg1 will be populated, and if it is not, print out an error message, which is the usage doc. Now, this is not like an ergonomic way to do it, but it's a very simple way to get yourself kind of off the ground. And like if you're creating a command line utility for yourself and you don't really need like very, very pretty output, this can kind of be enough. And so we actually need to supply it with an argument on the command line. So I'll just say that the cargo run is actually compiling our project and then copying it into or creating an output into this thing called fu. Now this is the executable that's actually being run. So if I give it an argument, and I just want to say text1, and then actually we'll just do hello.text and then hello.png. So that's where we're going to end up. We get our output, which is arg1 is hello text and arg2 is hello png. So that's the very, very first thing that we want to see. I'm going to need to, now Rust is actually updated. So as I was mentioning very, very early on, this is actually an Easter egg inside the source code examples. It doesn't exist. in the book directly. It's used in some of the pictures that are generated in chapter 7, but it isn't actually provided complete. So if you've just joined the stream, I'll just provide a little bit of output. What we're trying to do is create these PNG files of file formats, and so you can see that HTML looks a little bit different to, oh, and I played around with some of the color variations. We can do that too if you want to play with me. Is that the right terminology to use? I don't know. So we need to include a an external library. In Rust, an external library is called a crate. Now, you know, because that's kind of cute and fun. The reason why I've got this old syntax is that this example was written when before the 2018 change, and as it is like an Easter egg, I haven't updated. So let's see if that will. Oh, we need to build it. So I'll just click run again. Okay, it's saying unresolved, no image. Okay, so what on earth does that mean? Now, if I go to cargo run, I've got inside here I've got my dependencies. What is wrong with this? Could not compile ArrayVec. Why not? Now, if we no unresolved, that's a strange error to encounter. But I want to show you what it is that I'm doing. So what I'm trying to demonstrate here is that Rust has a very, very rich set of like third-party libraries that you can call on. And the one that we're going to call on is this thing called image. Now to explain the story, we go to docs. Well, one option is to go to docs.rs, docs.rs, and then /create name, and there's the version number. So this is the most recent one. To find them though, we go to cargo.io, and then there's a, oh, and we've broken. Apparently the internet is dead. That's not a great thing to encounter. Now, did I go to the right website? I'm sure I went to the right website. Oh, it's crates.io. Of course, it's not cargo.io. Come on. Yeah. Right. So that's actually a very, very important. So I just had someone fix my code, which I'm very grateful for because I was super confused. Now I'm going to still ask for the 18 because I don't want it. Ah, okay, right. Okay, so super helpful there. I just got myself a bit trapped, and thank you, I've been untrapped. So what I needed to do was tell Rust that I'm using new syntax. So previously I had this extern crate but I hadn't opted into the new behavior, and so to do so I needed to move to the new edition. So I've done that. Great. Now I'm going to and now I'm compiling, and now it's saying, buddy, you haven't actually used this anywhere. So what I want to do now is create a picture, and let's try this. I'm just going to ignore the arguments that I've created. Oh, maybe not. Maybe we'll actually create an actual file. We won't worry about reading it in. Oh, no. We'll go, sorry. I keep changing my mind about what I want, where I want to start. We'll use this. Let's create a picture. What we're going to do is invoke this new method. Now Rust doesn't have constructors. It only so this is just by convention. The Rust community has decided that the new method is how to create a new object. There's actually a different way. So if we ask for not found in scope, okay, so I want compile, I want height, Oh, I see. Okay, so I need this width thing again. So I want to say that I'm going to make it 512 pixels wide using an unsigned 32-bit integer. And likewise with height. I can't find that crate. Okay, so file. Oh, right. So I'm going to need to read in a file. Okay, we'll do so. So file in is the file input file name. And the file that I want to create is, it's got this ampersand thing on it. Now, ampersand sort of tells Rust that I'm sending a reference to open. Remember at the start, we hit this problem where I encountered this borrow checker error. Now, we've got a weird situation, and I think we'll probably recreate it, that file is not found in the scope, so we need to bring in file. So do that. It's saying RGB image is not in scope, so I'll need to do that. I won't do a glob, like a glob import. I will bring it in explicitly. And now we have this kind of weird situation where, so we get this error that we haven't supplied the argument. So we're still not in this. So if I were to run with, I'll do dash cargo run --12, and it will work. And now we get a different error saying that I'm unable to open a file, and we kind of get this horrible output. But let's ignore that for now. So we're trying to create an image by reading a file. Here we're saying that we've got, but the problem, the confusing thing for a new programmer is that in println, I'm not specifying an ampersand, but in open I am. Now, how does that work? Well, it works by chance. Not really. It works by some special behavior which says that, well, not even special behavior. It works because inside println we, oh, and I probably shouldn't have gone to the definition of the actual internals, but the internals eventually go to, well, actually, no, that one, no. Actually, I'm not going to muck around with the inside of the stuff. What it ends up is actually internally it only needs a reference, and so yeah, we don't actually need to supply it as an argument. It kind of figures it out for itself. Whereas the expect method will take things by like in a more concrete way. It will kind of suck up the argument that I'm saying. Let's get to the point. Sorry. Okay, so now we're in the situation where we're able to pass in arguments from the command line. We need to open a file. So the first thing we should do is probably find a file to open. And I, for some reason, thought it'd be funny and interesting to create a to get some Much Ado About Nothing, you know, Romeo. So I downloaded Project Gutenberg's Much Ado About Nothing by William Shakespeare because I thought it's kind of this weird recursive thing that I'm creating a project about nothing, really. Does anyone else find that funny? Not really, probably not. So I'm going to use the cargo file that I've just created. And now it's saying that I don't have an output file, so I'm just going to do cargo cargo.png. Now cargo.png is the second argument, but we're actually not going to do anything with it. Okay, so we're in a much better space now. So we're actually opening the file. We do that before we trigger the error that it's encountered. So let's prove that. So how do you read from a file? Well, I've got this file in thing, and I by default need to supply a buffer, but there's also this really useful method, read to string, and it's saying I need a mutable reference to a string. So let's say mutable, I need to create a mutable value, contents string new and contents. Now I can print the contents of contents, which is probably a good reason not to use that as a variable name. Now this only deals with the input file name. Oh, now it's saying that that's not valid syntax. That was just my editor deciding that it wanted to be helpful. And did I mean to use a semicolon? Yes, I did. Thank you, Rust, for being so helpful. That's very nice of you. Not a type. Expecting a type here because of method not found in standard S. Okay, so we're getting some really interesting error messages. What it's saying is that this read to string thing doesn't exist, but my editor thought that it did. So where does this come from? It's probably defined in some extension. It's definitely inside libstandard. Now, I bet it's in this IO prelude. So what is happening here? What on earth have I just triggered? Well, what I've just triggered is that the core type, this file thing, doesn't include the method, even though, so what's very, very customary whenever you're dealing with IO, which are files, network, and anything like that deals with input and output relating to hardware peripherals, is that Rust, sort of idiomatic Rust will include this kind of magic string, like use standard IO prelude glob and bring everything from that prelude into local scope. So we can kind of go and dig into what that prelude actually is, but it provides a bunch of helper methods, including, fingers crossed, sorry for tapping the mic, fingers crossed it includes the read to string. Oh, it does. Great. Okay, so now I get another error message. And this one's actually very, very helpful. It's saying, actually, look, mate, Tim, come on, Tim. You've given me the right type, but I don't have the right access. I don't need ownership over it. I need a mutable, a read-write reference. So there's, like, as we've touched on earlier, there's kind of a couple of different ways that you can pass access along with a value to a method or a function. By default, you will be providing, that is just with if you just pass the variable in as is, we kind of provide ownership. So we gift our ownership of contents, so main currently has ownership, into read to string. Now that wouldn't be super sensible in this case, because after the read to string is finished, it would no longer be valid for main to access contents again. So the only special thing that an owner can do in Rust is it kills, like it cleans up once at the end of its scope, and so there'd be no point in sending contents into read to string, because you'd no longer be able to read from that string afterwards, because it would have been deleted at the end of the function. We can provide a read-only reference, but this is called a borrow. Now read isn't super useful because the whole point of this method is to actually mutate or change it and take the content from the file and put it into a string. So let's see if we can get a little bit closer. Hey, we can. We get a whole bunch of warnings, and I can explain those too. But right now, if I just run the cargo with the quiet option, it will actually still pretty, and it's pretty angry with me. It really doesn't want me to do some of these things. It's saying we're not using all these variables, you really shouldn't be bothering with them, what on earth. And let's try, okay. Okay, right, so here's a problem. Files can break. Between calling the operating system could trigger an error at any point saying, you know, the file has been deleted, or maybe it's illegal to access it, you don't have the right file permissions, for example, and so this read to string thing may fail. Now how do I deal with that? We chain methods. So the easiest one is actually unwrap. I say easiest, but also it's very heavily frowned upon. I think every video about Rust explains in detail how the borrow checker works. Well, yeah, maybe. I think one of the reasons why that is the case is that it's such a novel concept. It doesn't exist in other programming languages. It also seems to be the area where new programmers to Rust tend to get trapped. And the other thing is, it's really, really good and very, very useful as a way for kind of ensuring that you're programming in a way that is robust. And so it's actually very, very nice as a programmer. You know, whenever I go back to Python, or whenever or another programming language like say Go or Java even, although I do less Java. I always wonder about when a value will be deleted. And I get really, really scared of accessing things at the, you know, when they shouldn't be accessed. And so but I think it maybe it's interesting actually. Maybe it does get over explained.